My name is Tim Smith. I work for an international shipping company called Kuehne Nagel, and within that I work for the Emergency Relief Division, which does a lot of work for the aid organisations.
Okay, and I know that you also have some experience with NGOs. Can you also say what you did there?
Well, apart from the work that we presently do within Kuehne Nagel for the NGOs and the UN community and the Red Cross, in my previous role before I joined Kuehne Nagel, I worked for the World Food Programme as the Rome-based head of the logistics cluster. So I was interacting with these guys on a daily basis.
So the perspective of private industry, can you tell me about some of your experiences working with NGOs and some of the disaster response that was effective or ineffective, using specific examples?
Well, I think there's a point that needs to be made that there are lessons that can be learned from both sides, and that's something which came up in the conference today, and I think it was a very valid point. The commercial sector often comes to the UN and the NGOs thinking they have a whole heap of lessons they can teach these guys, but they don't often have, the commercial sector that is, doesn't often have a proper understanding of the work of the aid agencies, let's just call it that. We really need to sit and listen to these guys and understand how different their world is from one day in Darfur, where you have a large-scale but predictable emergency, compared to the Haiti emergency, where it hits very suddenly and you really are battling to grasp what the job is that you need to do. The best way that we can help these guys, that is the best way that the commercial sector can help the aid organisations, is to be there when we are needed and to give these guys the room to get their work done. So we're not getting under their toes in Port-au-Prince saying, what can we do for you? Basically looking for business. We're keeping a respectful distance, saying this is what we can do, this is what we're already moving from China or Miami or Washington or wherever, and keep that in mind. Let us know when your plan starts to formulate, and we'll do what we can to assist.
So what do you do in advance to make that possible when something like Haiti occurs?
Well, there's about 40% of our clients in numbers have established freight rates with us. We guarantee their sea freight rates for up to a year. We guarantee their air freight rates for up to 3 months. And that's based on the volumes that they move on a regular basis to these various locations. It's very often the case that aid organisations are already in country when the new emergency hits, when the natural disaster comes. The same is true of Pakistan for the earthquake and floods. The same is true for Haiti. What changes is the volumes. So what we can do in downtimes and times of non-emergency is to provide that freight rate and service structure for their regular business that can quickly be ramped up when the volumes start to double, triple, go up tenfold because of the nature of the emergency.
Can you speak as to anything you do to help make aid and logistics efficient, say, in Africa?
Yeah, Africa is very different in different parts of Africa. In southern Africa, you have a much more predictable market situation. East Africa is less so, and West Africa is very difficult in places. What we do is we find the right carriers, the right transporters, the right customs agents. We have a lot of our own offices in Africa, but where we don't, we have the right partners to get the job done. And therefore, when the big emergencies hit, we have the right partners to get it done. Very often in Africa it's a problem with, it's true of other places as well, but in Africa it's a problem with capacity. Peacekeeping operations can move in and take up all the capacity. The UN can move in and take up all the capacity, leaving very little for the NGOs. If we have established relationships in place already, we can provide a stable framework for these guys to operate in, no matter what the volumes.
Okay, and can you speak as to anything that you or your organization are doing in terms of capacity building, either within your organization, across organizations, or in communities?
Sure. Within our own organization, what we have to do is we have to take our, we're 55,000 employees, but there are 50 to 60 people within our organization who truly understand the aid world. And they have to push that understanding through the organization to make sure that our guys in Singapore are doing a good job. And that somebody, for example, doesn't say to World Vision, where do you want to store your spectacles, because they don't understand what World Vision is all about. We have to push that understanding through and explain the aid world to the rest of them. Make sure the service levels are there. Outside of that, with our longer term clients, we have a lot of training programs. And the best thing that we can do for these guys is to equip them with the commercial knowledge, to tell them what we know about how freight markets work, how air freight works, how sea freight works, custom procedures. And that is, for an aid logistician, that is certainly over 60% of their work, and in my guess it's closer to 80%. They've got to take that basic set of skills and then through their experience apply those skills to every new situation they're in. And they're a resourceful bunch. They do that very well. Sometimes they don't necessarily have the basic skills because they've been pushed into these situations without having commercial training.
And so you mentioned training. You're within Kuehne Nagel training people in the aid. Can you mention just a couple of the most important characteristics that you might try to pass on to others outside of the 50 or 60?
In terms of the understanding we push through the organisation? Well, the question is, how do the aid workers, how does aid differ as a market to the commercial sector? I would say, firstly, they're a lot more demanding because they have to be. Secondly, their skill sets vary hugely. And one day I'll be dealing with somebody who has no freight experience. Next day I'll be dealing with somebody who worked for one of our competitors a few years back and is now working for an aid organisation. So there's a huge range. We have to make everybody understand that you may be facing somebody who doesn't know what a bill of lading is. And we shouldn't be surprised or spend any time rolling our eyes. Just get on with the job. Secondly, to understand that they talk a lot between themselves. There's no problem with information sharing. So whereas in the commercial sector, Ford might not pass on what they've learnt to another automotive manufacturer because there's a competitive advantage in it. CARE will happily talk to World Vision or IFRC or the American Red Cross. And therefore there's a big reputation at stake. We've got to make sure that the job is done right every time. Because if we mess up, they're going to talk.